Ladies and gentlemen, from the depths of flyover country in the heartland of America, the Kansas City on the other side of the mighty Mo, welcome to Hittin the Bricks with Kathleen, the do-it-yourself genealogy podcast with your questions and her answers. I am John, your humble hubby host, and today we'll be talking to Angela Hagenbach and Vincent Bell of the Black Ancestors Awareness Campaign, located in the rolling hills of Weston, Missouri. There's a lot to cover, so let's start hitting the bricks. But first things first, Kathleen.
Yes.
Hey, baby.
You're so silly.
So we have a full studio today. It's really packed, and we're gonna go around the room. One person sitting to my left is Kathleen, the brick hitter, and then we have Angela and Vincent. And we're gonna let Angela and Vincent tell you who Angela and Vincent are.
Okay, well, my name is Angela Hagenbach, and I'm the founder of the Black Ancestors Awareness Campaign of Weston, Missouri. I'm a fifth-generation descendant of Black lineage. I discovered that my mother's people came into Missouri by way of my great-great-great-grandmothers from Virginia and Kentucky. And in my search to find out more about them, I realized that there was this whole rich Black history in Weston, and that's why the Black Ancestors Awareness Campaign was founded.
Angela Hagenbach is the founder of the Black Ancestors Awareness Campaign, and we will, of course, get listeners their links and their info. Kathleen, did you have something? Okay. Vincent.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, I'm Vincent Bell. I'm Angela's son. Yeah. So I'm a sixth generation descendant, and I'm kind of a newcomer to BAAC. I joined BAAC as tech support in a tech advisory position, and have since become more and more ingrained in the Black Ancestors Awareness Campaign.
Okay. So John, Vincent has a very interesting background. Vincent, tell us a little bit about your resume.
I guess if you want to go to the way back machine, I had a small speaking role as a featured extra in a telefilm called Cross of Fire, which in a roundabout way I kind of come full circle, because the movie itself was about D.C. Stevenson, who was Grand Dragon of the KKK back in during Prohibition, and I was 7 years old when I was in that, and so even though in schools they didn't really necessarily teach us much about that period of time, it was something that, because I'd been involved in it in some capacity as a child, that era of history and and before was something that was always fascinating to me. So that's another reason why BAAC kind of, roped me in, if you will.
Angela, can you tell us a little bit about your background?
Well, I started out on my professional career, if you will, as a fashion model. I was walking to work downtown Kansas City, and I passed this brick building that had no description on the outside whatsoever, and I passed it every day. Anyway, so this guy comes out and says, "Have you ever modeled?" And I'm like, "No, I'm 16 and silly." And he says, "Well, if you can come in and try on this outfit, I think you might have a career on your hand." And I'm like, "Okay." And, it was just really silly. I mean, no one told me, do not go into a building with strange people.
Don't go into a strange building when they're asking you to try on clothes.
And his name was Mark Delich, and the studio was called Zoom Studio. And he said, "If your picture appears in the newspaper on Sunday, I can pay you." Well, there I was. And he handed me a check for $60. Anyway, long story short, I was a regular fashion print model for all the stores in Kansas City. And then I won a contest to go to New York to see some agents, and I was picked up immediately. And so I had about a 17-year career traveling around the world as a fashion model. And along the way, I always loved to sing. I come from a musical family. I would sing in the back, in the dressing rooms and stuff. And it turns out that I was singing in front of the right person at the Ritz-Carlton. And I'm telling my age here because there's no Ritz-Carlton here either. But they had this room called the Top of the Ritz, which is on the top floor of the hotel. I got my first steady gig as a jazz artist with the likes of Russ Long, Milt Abel, and Tommy Ruskin, Wednesday through Saturday, for 4 years. Now, I was doing this at the same time I was modeling. Eventually, I phased out the modeling because it was interfering with, my jazz career, which I loved. And then I became a jazz ambassador for the United States. I did 2 tours, toured all over the world. And I took a sabbatical in 2018 because I wanted to find my ancestry. And I said, okay. And I wanted to write a book and all of this. So I took a sabbatical. And then that was 2019. And then COVID hit, and I kind of never went back. Except I do corporate events and fundraisers and things for the Black Ancestors Awareness Campaign.
I think actually that is where that's where I first heard of you. Where was it, Kathleen?
Jardines or
It was at Jardines.
That makes sense. Jardines right around the corner.
Which is also no longer with us.
No longer there. But I think
Story
that
of my
was...
life.
And what about you, Kathleen? Because I thought you went back further.
Oh, okay.
Actually, I met her sister first.
Okay.
So when I started seeing them, I just really enjoyed talking to them because of the Weston, Missouri history. And I think we should start there. Let's start with a little bit about Weston and its Black community, and also what is the Black Hawk Street?
So Weston, Missouri was established in 1836. It was Platte County itself, 2 million acres, was purchased, called the Platte Purchase, and was added on to the state of Missouri. In 1836, it was purchased. By 1837, Weston was born. And there was this huge basin, like 30 feet wide, 30 feet deep, where all these ships and things could come in. It was a big gulch. And so the Southerners, with this new land opening up, the people from Kentucky and Virginia and Tennessee came to build up Weston, and they brought their households and their enslaved people with them. They wanted to make a new South, if you want, or a new cotton planting system, which of course cotton didn't work, but hemp did. And so in 1849, there were about 300 residents in Weston. By 1850, there were 5,000, and more than a quarter of these people were Black and primarily enslaved, including my ancestors. And of course, around 1850 was when the Fugitive Slave Act happened. And so there was all kinds of mayhem based on the way that the place that is where Weston is situated is right across the river, which no longer exists, by the way, from Free Soil, Indian Territory. It was just a fort, Fort Leavenworth. So there was potential for lots of runaways, and a lot of it did happen. Anyway, these enslaved people, like one of my grandmothers, she was able to purchase her freedom. Her name was Dinah Wright Robinson, and she purchased her freedom, the freedom of her husband. His name was Thomas, and their daughter Eliza Jane, which was my mother's great-grandmother, and Moses. And so, she started buying property. For some reason, the men in my family weren't buying property in Weston. It was the women. And both sides of my family, these women bought all this property. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about my other ancestor, Mariah Dayton Vaughn. Now, she was also in Platte County, and her husband, Simon Dayton, lived in Clay County, and they would go back and forth to court. And they both came from the same county, Kentucky. And so eventually they had an abroad marriage, but in 1861, they were married in 51 on the plantation. I have documentation of this. But 1861, he escaped and joined the Civil War to fight for the Union. And I have the post bill that they wanted 10,000 Black men to serve in the war. And for that, they would get their own freedom, the freedom of their mother and their family, plus a wage, clothes, and food. And so he took off. Unfortunately, he didn't make it back. So both of my grandmothers got their freedom before the Civil War was ended. And of course, their children were educated at the Mary McLeod Bethune School. Well, actually, it wasn't quite that yet. It was the Weston School for Colored Children. And by 1900, it became the Mary McLeod School. And in that research, I realized this is a partial story. I need to know about their neighbors. I need to learn who these people were. So to answer your question about Black Hawk Street, I'm not 100% certain why it was named such, but there was a leader of the Sauk and Fox American natives, and his name was Black Hawk. So, but the street on Black Hawk, it ran through what is now the Weston City Ben Holiday Park, and it tended to flood because in that park was this winding Mill Creek that ran west to the Missouri River. This area flooded a lot. So after freedom, after the Civil War, that land was not very good land. You couldn't farm on it and everything. So it was more affordable, I think, for the newly emancipated to purchase land there. But this one part of the block that is a dead end was a man named J.B. Evans. And he was Justice of the Peace. He was a marshal. He was, all these things. But he was also a friend to the Black race. So I find him he's an affiant in Mariah's pension files, paperwork to get her pension from her husband serving in the war. And then later on in the 1870s, she had to sue this person that she bought a home from. And J.B. Evans was the marshal at the time, and he helped her with that. She was twice widowed by this time. Also, the current people that live there, and I probably shouldn't say this, but it's excellent evidence that it was a station on the Underground Railroad, because it's so beautifully restored now, and they opened the floor, and I went down, and where it went out to Mill Creek, which went to the river, is all concrete in now. And so I've
always been told that Weston had a part of the Underground Railroad. Of course, my family's from Central Kansas, but looking in Kansas City, Kansas, where we moved to, we used to go through this one little tunnel area where we could get between Kansas City, Kansas, and Park University.
Yes.
And we were told that there was also the route that often took the runaway enslaved people from Weston. I don't know if it's true. I have not seen it documented, but we're not going to find that kind of information documented unless we find a document amongst the enslavers. Exactly. And that I haven't seen. So, Vince, where do you feel like you fall in this history?
Right now, I'm obviously a product of it, but as we keep digging deeper and learning more and more about things, it kind of feeds my need to know and to understand and to learn more. I suppose that, if anything, I feel the need to bring it to the fore, and I understand it's not going to be easy, and there's a lot of intentionally destroyed or missing documents, and among many other things. So there's a lot of stuff we might not be able to find. But one of the things that I am doing to hopefully discover or rediscover the events and stories from our past is I've kind of taken on a project as I have time. It's definitely a volunteer thing where I've been going to Weston City Hall. And BAAC has a book scanner. It's not like a flatbed scanners you have in your office. So what I've been doing is going through these century-old, or sometimes some of them are, I think the oldest one that we discovered so far was about 136, 37 years old. Ledgers and all these other things from like mayor's dockets and stuff from way back. I'm scanning those in, to preserve them, because that's my, first and foremost, I just want to get everything scanned in before I really go through and see what I've worked on, because they're deteriorating. So I think if we're going to find anything to bring some of that history out, it's going to be in there. At least that's a good place to start.
That is excellent, because we just talked about court records. Court records are the key to everyone because you're following the money.
Exactly.
And as long as you can follow the enslavers' money, you will get your answers. And that's with deeds, minute books, guardian books, probate and wills, and any kind of county court records. So that is excellent. Now, Angela, you started talking about Mr. Evans, who was an advocate. Was he an enslaver also, his line?
I'm not sure if he had slaves or not. It's very possible, but I do know that there was an organization called the Platte County Self-Defenses, and their whole plan was to make sure they were pro-slavers. So he started an organization that was anti-slavery. There was this city document that he held this meeting. It was like 133, I believe, Weston businessmen signed this document to help combat the slavers, the pro-slavers, and because they were rushing people over to Kansas to vote for things and pretending that they lived there, and all these things were going on right up the street here. Right. Because I'm in a town called Kickapoo Township, Missouri, which is unincorporated Parkville. And so I'm in Parkville. That's why I know the area so well. I don't know that he was an enslaver, but he was friends with Reverend Frederick Starr. Thank you. Reverend Frederick Starr, who was accosted for teaching enslaved people to read and encouraging enslavers to first educate their enslaved and then set them free. And he was seen riding down Main Street with a black winch and things like that. So, and these are documented. Oh my God.
Story.
Yeah. And so all of these people, including my other great-great-grandmother's enslaver, they were all part of this anti-slavery movement in Weston. So, I would imagine, I'm not saying that he didn't own slaves. I haven't researched him that well, but Elijah Cody, for example, he was a slave owner. In fact, he had a hemp office on Main Street, which is where our mural is going to be painted. He was also a member of this anti-slavery group, and I know he had a slave or two. And he had a hemp farm and a hemp business. So, yeah, and hemp died. There's a storyboard of history, 5 storyboards on the chamber wall outside where tourists like to stop and read. And it starts in 1836 and goes to 1950 or something. And the one line about Black history is 1861 to 1865. The Civil War ends slavery but dooms hemp. And that's what really made me say, okay, I'm going to have to dig up these people. This obscured history cannot stand any longer. I feel compelled. I feel buoyed by the ancestors to tell their stories and find out about their lives.
So when I think of Weston, I think tobacco.
Right. Well, see, tobacco became king after hemp because hemp was so labor intensive. It was a year-round crop, and you had to plant it. You had to do all these things. You had to stack it and let it rot, and then you had to pull all the fiber. It was a year-long crop, and no one wanted to do it after slavery was over, including the recently emancipated. And so tobacco was less labor intensive, and so it became a big tobacco town after hemp. Yeah.
That brings us to the importance of Juneteenth. The reason we invited Angela and Vincent to join us is because of the Weston area sponsored by the BAAC. And do you call it BAAC?
BAAC, like Back to the Future by way of the past.
I saw that, and I thought that was really cute to do Back to the Future by way of the past.
Yeah.
So the whole idea, John, was to make sure that people know about not only Weston's history, but African American heritage, and history is American history. And we want to encourage and invite people to one of the events that Weston will be having. So, Angela, can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Okay, we have year-round events, but our signature event is Juneteenth, and that's how we started back in, this is our 5th annual, as a matter of fact. Our first one lined up beautifully with the 19th being on a Saturday, and President Biden deemed it a federal holiday, which is different from a national holiday. Federal means that things like federal buildings can be closed and so on and so forth, and we'll hope that that will still stand because a lot of things are being dismantled. So that was was 5 years ago, and this is our 5th one. And what we tend to do with the Juneteenth festivals in Weston is give all this Weston Black history. Now, we do other events throughout the year, and we incorporate other Black history within, I should say, American history on a more broader spec. But typically, our Juneteenth events is about Weston's Black history, and so that we can shore it up, because we are a nonprofit and we are a member. We're our standing committee of the Weston Historical Museum, who is celebrating their 65th anniversary, and we're celebrating our 5th anniversary. And so we've got a lot to catch up on. And we have an initiative called Museum Without Walls. And since there's no room in our current museum for any other artifacts, documents, or anything like that, we're finding other ways to elevate and tell the history of Weston's Black people who were, like most places, intentionally obscured. And so our Museum Without Walls, for example, we've got a mural coming up, and it's kind of laced with controversy. We've got some naysayers, but we're managing. We're funded. We've got 2 grants to do it. We've talked to the Planning and Zoning Historical Preservation folks, and we've got some people kind of pushing back. But for the most part, everyone realizes that it's time to bring its Black history out of well past time.
Yes.
So what is the African American or Black population in Weston now?
It goes up by 200% when Vincent and I go to town. Well, I mean, but the people there are so welcoming. And I feel so welcomed every time I go there. We walk the streets, we talk to the merchants and the community, and I'm happy to say we get a lot of love.
That's excellent.
And back to Black Hawk, by the way, we have a new monument that came up in 2023 that's in the park where I told you. And my ancestors bought a lot of property within that park, and unfortunately, I have no ancestral homes there. I mean, I do. There's a couple of them that's been on the homes tour and they've been refurbished, but they're not in our family any longer. So there's this beautiful monument telling that little bit of a story, and it's a granite, monument. And the sidewalk that winds through this park used to be a continuation of the street Black Hawk. And we got that named Black Hawk Walk. That happened 3 years ago. And a continuation from that street on Black Hawk, which is also the first Black church, which was the second Missionary Baptist Church, established in 1865. They raised $650, and by 1867, the building was built. And right next door to that, one of my grandmothers bought a house next door to that. And across the street from that, there's this large corner lot, Spring Street in Black Hawk, where Colonel James A. Price, who was a Union officer, lived on Spring Street, but his property rounded Black Hawk. And after the Civil War, he was also a member of that organization that J.B. Evans started. After the Civil War, he had transitional homes built on his property so that these newly emancipated people would have some place to go. I mean, because freedom came in Weston on January 11th, 1865, in the dead of winter. So I imagine that the transitional housing and the church was raised at the same time, because they're literally across the road from each other.
Okay. So tell us about the event.
This year is our thing. We have a theme every year, and this year's theme is the neighbors of Black Hawk, 1850 to 1920. And so it's through pre-Civil War to Jim Crow. It's sort of like a block party. We're going to tell J.B. Evans' story. We're going to tell the story of the Second Missionary Baptist Church. We've actually got a preacher, and the scene for that vignette, will be going to the church, because soon after 1890s, they moved to a larger building. So while they're at their Black Hawk site, this is the scene that we're setting. And then also my great-great-great-grandmother, Gina Bardwell by chance?
I went to school with her, and we were Jack and Jillers together. So yes.
So she is, she lives in New York, but she comes back often, and she is going to portray my great-great-great-great-grandmother, Mariah Dayton Vaughn, and tell that story. And then, of course, Phyllis Becker and myself and Gina, we form a group called Filling the Gap. And the gap is Gina, Angela, and Phyllis. But the gap that we're filling is our ancestors. So it's feeling or filling, whatever, whichever suits. And
that was who we saw Kathleen?
Yes.
Yeah, at the Kansas Museum.
Exactly.
Yeah, she's the one I told you I knew as a child, and then she's a year older than I am, or maybe 2 in school, and we also went to the same college.
And her mother was my high school counselor.
And I remember
yeah.
her mother.
Yes, Geraldine. And then we have a segment called Did You Know? And this year's Did You Know is collard greens. And so we're going to tell the story of the history of collard greens, how they came over from Africa and they were considered a weed and the enslaved people could forage for them. And we're getting these greens. It's going to be a tasting as well because there's a free lunch, free barbecue lunch put on by the Western Rotary. And so we're going to cook up a mess of greens, literally, and the Rotary will serve it with the barbecue luncheon. But we're purchasing the greens from the Pearl Family Farm, which is a 135-year-old black farm. And the man that started this farm, he was enslaved. He ran away and joined the Union Army, and he made it back. And he started this farm. And this farm is in Waldron, Missouri, which is between where I am and Weston. And it hasn't stopped production in 135 years. And so that's where we're getting our greens from. And we're going to have booths, like there'll be a farmer's market booth from the Pearl Family Farm. We've got some lost art booths that people can do after our Juneteenth event, like old-fashioned way of making lace. And all these booths are historical information as opposed to merchandise. We do have merchandise booths as well. But back to Juneteenth, doors open at 10:30 with a jazz band, Roger Wilder, Steve Ragazzi, and Mike Warren. And then at 11 o'clock, we get a call to order from Baba Diallo. And he's an African dance and drum educator. Anyway, so you call the room to order, and then everything starts at 11 o'clock, and there's going to be an intermission, and then we finish up at about 1 o'clock, then the lunch. We've got a silent auction, and all of our events are free. And when I say all of our events, we have a summer speaker series. We have If These Walls Could Talk, which is a commemoration of Martin Luther King and all the champions of change. We just have events throughout the year to help educate people and tell them about American history that's been obscured. And this year's speaker series is History Along the Missouri Borders or something. So we've got these 3 different speakers and funded by the Missouri Humanities.
If I'm interested in some of those other events, I don't want to detract from the upcoming Juneteenth, but if I'm interested in those other events, how do I find out about those? Is there a website or?
Yes, it's BAACWeston.org. BAACWESTON. So, Kathleen, if I may ask a question, I am very fascinated with your story about your childhood going through some tunnel to Parkville.
We did it as kids.
That's what I'm saying.
Out of Quindaro.
Yes.
And now they have it barred up so you can't do it. But as a little kid, I was probably under the age of 12. We were able to still get down to the water from KCK.
Wow. And you mean the river, Missouri River?
The Missouri River, where the enslaved people would escape and get on the Kansas side from Missouri. If you stand on Park University's property, you can see the path. There is actually, you can see, and I think there might be a monument there now about how they used to do it.
I don't think
we were
so.
on the other side of it, and our parents dared us to even touch that water, and they never knew that we were doing it. But we had some very bad boys in our neighborhood who taught us and showed us, and we knew how all of us did it.
Well, I have an opposite story of that. I was older then because I already had my boys. I had Vincent and Aaron. And Vincent, you remember when we would go to the observatory at Park? About how old were you?
Couldn't have been older than 10.
Okay. And then his younger brother's about 3 years younger. So there was this observatory, like to look up to the sky. Mm-hmm. And it was derelict because I guess it was slated to be torn down. And I was a black sky watcher for many, many, many years. And so that really fascinated me. I packed us a lunch and broke in because it was, it was like, do not enter. And so the boys and I, we would go in there and we went in there regularly. And just to be in that moment. And I'd heard that right across from where this space was right across the river to Quindaro where slaves escaped.
Yeah, I always found that really fascinating how they did it. And if they could get on that Kansas side, we had the Massachusetts group who also helped them escape. They came from Massachusetts Massachusetts to settle Kansas, which really did not make Missouri happy, but they did. Most of them stayed in the Lawrence area, matter of fact. I mean, that's actual documented fact. And my mother, being a quilter, used to tell us the story about the runaway enslaved people from Missouri to Kansas. Now, Vince, you've been a little too quiet for my comfort. I want you to tell me, what is your experience in the last 4 years of the event, the Juneteenth event?
Well, to be honest, my first Juneteenth was last year. Yeah, I had a different job and stuff like that. And then I had a setback, pretty major one, where I shattered my tibial plateau, 2 years ago. And I was obviously sidelined at my job because at the time I was still a manager at Walgreens and I could not work because I couldn't even stand on my leg. So in that time, as I was recovering and getting my strength back, that's when I was roped into joining BAAC. You know, again,
roped into. I love that.
Roped into it.
But
encouraged.
Okay. And so again, it was mostly as like a tech support capacity at that time, and I just learned more and more about different things. And I also happen to have a really nice DSLR camera, which was good because I was able to take very high quality photos of various locations and monuments and things of that nature. So I was doing that, also trying to, I don't want to say revitalize because it was not at the time very vital at all, but get our social media going and kind of flesh that out, namely YouTube and Instagram and things like that. So that's kind of where I started. And then I was enlisted to do at these Walls Could Talk event where I was speaking about Frederick Douglass. And after that, I started getting more and more responsibilities moving into Juneteenth. I wasn't a presenter at that stage, but at the time I was a kind of a co-volunteer coordinator, and I was going around getting photos, videos of the crowd, of the presenters. Basically, year after year now, I'll be doing more and more with different events.
Who's presenting this year? Will you be presenting?
I won't be presenting, but I will be co-emceeing the event. So I'll be the one introducing the presenters and delivering information with my co-MC, Leah Ricketts, who is Phyllis Becker's niece.
It's a family affair.
That's kind of how my involvement with Juneteenth has blossomed, if you will.
I have a comment about the Park Hill School District. We attended a groundbreaking and just last weekend, an open house ribbon cutting for our brand new Park Hill School. It's called the Angeline Washington Elementary, and it's about 10 minutes from here. And Angeline Washington was Angeline Rucker, who married a guy named Willie Washington from Weston. And there's all this Black history here in Parkville. Okay, they married, and the Washington guy, he has a church called the Washington Chapel. And I'm not involved in this. I'm involved in the Western history. But so there's the Washington Chapel that's being revitalized. It was defunct for several decades. And now the school, named for his wife, Angeline Washington Elementary, it's going to open in the fall. So,
and I know the Rucker family line.
You do?
I do. Okay. I need to write about them, actually.
Yes, and I was going to write about the school because I also write for the Museums Musings, which is a quarterly museum newsletter.
Part of my retirement transition is to really work closer with our community, at least the way I can, which is to write and expose other people.
So how do you know the Rucker family?
One of the Rucker people married a Strader, matter of fact, and my maiden name is Strader.
Oh my God.
I am not sure if we're related. She couldn't tell me. I believe it was Ruth Rucker. She couldn't tell me, and there are very few African American Straders from our exact line.
Yeah.
Where exactly, Angela, is this event going to be?
Okay, so on Saturday, June 14th, will be our 5th annual Juneteenth Heritage Jubilee in Weston at the Weston Red Barn Farm at 16300 Wilkerson Road. Okay, right off of 273. And what's unique about this space is that it was a rolling hills where a guy named Wilkerson owned this land, and he had lots of slaves. And there's so much history about this place that we can't even get into that right now because it would take too long to tell that story. It's across the street from the Halfway House, which is a whole nother situation. And it's called the Halfway House because it was halfway between Platte City and Weston. And of course, if you could make it there, you could possibly make it to the river and possibly to freedom. And so anyway, so there's a lot of history there, and we're trying to preserve that. I do want to mention that our Weston Black Heritage mural is slated to start in July, and hopefully the big reveal will be in October. And we interviewed 6 muralists out of the Kansas City area and selected Jose Faust, who's a wonderful poet and artist and many other things. It's going to be a Black history mural and to kind of tell the story from slavery to freedom, if you will. And it's right off Main Street leading into the Weston City Park, Ben Holiday Park. But to get there, you almost have to go through the Dinah Robinson courtyard, which was a courtyard that my great-great-great-grandmother Dinah purchased. Well, it was a lot when she purchased it. And she lost it during the Civil War due to BAAC taxes. And so she lost that property for $2.50. And I'm sure she was devastated. But anyway, it's been returned to her. The space is filled with antebellum bricks that was salvaged from a livery stable, Rent's livery. And for some reason, the wonderful city of Weston, when they tore it down, it was built in 1956, they salvaged the bricks and put them up on this hill where weeds and things grew, and we called it Snake Hill. But anyway, they donated the bricks to the Black Ancestors Awareness Campaign, and we had a Buy a Brick campaign. And so now these bricks are etched with sentiments and names of people that were buried in Laurel Hill Cemetery without headstones and such, or some of the buildings or businesses. And so she's surrounded by this community of people and well-wishers. And there's even a brick someone bought for John Brown and just things like that. Interpretive signage and so on and so forth. So
fantastic.
Yeah.
Anything else?
I really appreciate being guest on Hitting the Bricks with Kathleen. That's quite an honor. And I hope that your viewers will come to Weston and take the free Weston Black Heritage Walking and Driving tour, or if they want to have a group tour, they can email us tell them the address
info
again.
at backweston.org is the email address that people should use. I check that regularly several times a day. So.
Okay,
right.
So there's this new exhibit going up at the Harry Truman Library, and it's Dan White, this fabulous photographer who is, he just won a Pulitzer Prize, and it's all these jazz artists from the past and current, and I'm featured. So please go and check it out. Yeah.
Oh, for sure. And that's it. Oh, Truman Library.
Yes. So
fantastic. Anyway. Hey, thank you so much. Thank you, Vincent. It was a pleasure meeting you. Angela, great to see you again. Kathleen, hi, babe.
Aww.
Well, congratulations. You made it to the end of another episode. Thanks so much for staying. Thanks to Angela and Vincent for chatting with us. Thanks to Chewy Chewbacca Brent for his unwavering lack of interest in anything we're doing. The theme song for Hittin the Bricks was written and performed by Tony Fistknuckle and the Blackhawks. Watch for their next appearance at the Haunted Observatory in Parkville. Do you have a genealogical question for Kathleen? Drop us a line at hittinthebricks@gmail.com and let us know.